the EB3 side, like I talked to one franchisee who is in the home care space. He sponsored 60 caregivers from the Philippines and Vietnam. And he loves the program because they stay on for 2 years at like 95% retention, where an American caregiver, 50% retention after a month.
Yeah,
So he's a huge fan of the program. And yeah, it does take some time, but would love if you could talk a little bit about the EB3 program for those employers that are listening, as well as potential employees that want a job in the US and want to get a green card.
So I think the first thing you've got to understand with all these EBs is there's a big difference timeline wise if you're in the US with a visa and you're abroad at the consulate. Consular processing used to take about 6 to 8 months max from the I-140 approval. Now it's like 2 to 3 years. And there have been rumors of Department of State saying it might take them 5 years to get back to pre-COVID processing.
Wow.
So I warn all my clients, we can do a labor certification process. I love the program. If you're working it with a good lawyer, our statistics of approval on these cases, and I've done thousands, is 99.6%.
I saw I pulled up the list and you were like one of the top law firms.
Yeah, so Department of Labor disclosure files, it's all public information. I tell all my clients, look me up and look up any other lawyer you're considering to see how many cases you filed and what your statistic of approval is. But yeah, we do a lot of these and I love them because it is probably the only visa other than an immediate relative petition where the couple's actually in love and they make it to the interview, because sometimes people fight. But it's the only one that I think has no discretion. It's very objective and a very high rate of approval if everything is true and correct and you work with a good attorney, right? Because you do see a lot of denial rates. Like I think, the statistic of approval on a perm is about 90% is what the Department of Labor publishes, that they deny about 10% of labor certs. And then on the I-140 side, I think the statistics of EB3 denials is 25%. So it's really going to take a good lawyer to vet and document everything properly. But once you've got that done, it's very unlikely that you get a denial because there's no discretion, right? It's either the person, it's a real company, it can afford to pay this person, it met the recruitment and did everything in good faith. The foreign worker has the criteria to perform the job and they're not otherwise inadmissible. There is no reason that it should be denied.
So on the non-immigrant visa with, at least 2 years, I can think about the E2, maybe L1, spouses of those petitioners, F1 student visa potentially. Could a J1 work where you do J1?
I've done J's, but you can't start the perm until the person is in the US. Because remember, there's this intent issue. And you can't get a J with the intent to remain in the United States. You have to be very careful. The person has to get the J, come in, and then they can sign a contract for.
So the employer can test out the trainee. And if there's an amazing fit, then they can make a decision to sponsor the green card.
Right. And then we try to do it within the first month of the J because it's going to take me 15 to 18 months to get the perm approved, file the I-140 and the AOS, and then the EAD is taking a while. So I always tell clients there might be a gap of 6 months where you're not going to be able to work, and that's the reality.
Can you handle that?
Right. And then there's always 212E, but an employer may be willing to take that risk because if they do the process consular, we're looking at 3 years, right? So if you want to use the EB3 program to bring employees, it's going to take 3 years right now to get through the labor certification and the green card process and have that employee here in the US. Might even be longer. So I really advise people to look at other avenues to get people in the US. There's now also the parole program, right? Like there's a lot of Venezuelans and Cubans, Nicaraguans and Ukrainians who are coming to the US being sponsored by family, by friends, companies can sponsor, and they're bringing people to the United States. That's a market of workers that have status and workability for 2 years. So that's plenty of time to do a petition.